Thank you. Well, a populist used to be someone who cynically gave out cheap favors for personal gain. Whereas people who had a lot of friends, or they just did things a lot of people liked, were popular. And in everyday language, that hasn't changed. No one ever says, I'm very concerned about my kids. They have a lot of friends. Everyone seems to like them. We're a little populist. But in political discourse, there's been an abrupt switch. Today, the Oxford Dictionary claims that populism is a type of politics that claims to represent the opinions and wishes of ordinary people. By this logic, Gandhi, JFK, and Martin Luther King were raging populists. In my view, this reframing of basic virtues into antichrist levels of vice is down primarily to economics. Over the past few decades, we've seen the broad middle class split into two. Or rather, to put it more accurately, part of this class, maybe 15% or so, split off from the rest and formed its own class. I call them courtiers. Others have called them the clerisy or dream hoarders. It's much of a muchness. Populism isn't a response to anything. Populism is just life as we know it by another name. It's courtierism that is the new thing. Courtiers are usually people whose houses are worth 4 or 5 times what they paid for them, they're getting really solid pensions, and they've been protected from the new economy. Their children, also courtiers, are currently benefiting from the greatest wealth transfer in history, and will therefore be even more sheltered. I'd like to stress that although there's definitely a correlation, it's not really about the absolute amount of money such people have. The crucial difference is whether you have a safety net provided for you, or you live under actual market conditions, in which case, you're much more likely to be a populist. Courtiers increasingly have jobs in what have become the courtiering industries. Media, academia, NGOs, fields where conformity has become important to survive, precisely because they're increasingly funded and run top-down, rather than by the membership, which was previously the case. In my meritocratic society, many of the courtiers would be sharply downwardly mobile, because it would be overtaken by competition coming from below. But since that's a non-starter, they throw in their lot and view themselves, erroneously, as being part of the very wealthy, and who are now the prime funders of their jobs. So hence, they are courtiers to those patrons. It keeps them alive and in pumpkin spice lattes one more day. When you're doing better than could reasonably be expected, any change is likely to be for the worse, especially anything that smacks of control, scrutiny, accountability, or tightening things up. And that is why for them, any politics of change is seen as fringe and dangerous. It is dangerous for them, because they're one good inheritance tax regulation away from having their lives wrecked. Due to these life circumstances, there aren't really differences of opinion between courtiers and populists. There are differences of interest, which makes it much more vicious. 30 years ago, we all had friends who had major differences of opinion with us. Didn't really matter. You had all kinds of friends who had all kinds of crazy ideas. But the interests were much more uniform. You can change your opinion. You can't change your material interest, and definitely not just by thinking about it. So courtiers and their descendants really do live in an alternate reality, where blindly following the rules has turned out well for them. In their view, other people are justly punished for not making the same choices they did. Populism, on the other hand, comprising everybody else, is a surprisingly diverse field. You've got right-wing populists, left-wing populists, centrist populists, socialist populists, libertarian populists, all kinds of populists. But that very diversity is what makes it easier for the courtiers to split them. Their very conformity is an advantage in this regard. The courtier line, promulgated in the industries they dominate, is everyone is fringe and extreme, and anyone could turn out to be Hitler. You could be the person who enables the next Hitler. It's ironically a strategy that depends on people not being racist to be effective, but it's also really paralyzing. And the strategy has been to demonize and discard any major reform. Bernie, Corbyn, the Fire Star movement in Italy, the right and left in France, whatever. Trump, of course, because of this, we've been caught in a political loop for years, with courtiers taking down everything that could possibly offer an alternative, and everyone else has been so caught off guard by their boundary-busting behavior that we floundered. So we need to endure circumvent them as a class that's essentially functioning as strike breakers of democracy. How to do that? 1, The populist left and right should get together. Should have happened a long time ago, and yes, it entails compromise, but really you would have thought 20 years ago that US Republicans would be running on an anti-war platform. There's a lot there. Fiscally conservative, socially liberal is definitely a pattern that's been extremely caught in the digital democracy exercises that I've done. 2, remove the courtiers' economic advantages. A Cold War with Russia or China could have that effect if enough manufacturing is re-onshored. So even without attaining political power and changing specific rules, that's something that could happen. 3, let go of obsessing about wokeness. There are people who are obsessed with creating outrage in the name of wokeness, but there are also people who got just as obsessed with countering those outrages. Socialism gone too far becomes communism, conservatism gone too far becomes fascism, but liberalism gone too far becomes libertinism. I think we all know this now, and I'd like to say it was interesting, but it was a major win for the courtiers every single day, because every day that we're discussing some derivative outrage generation, we're not focused on constructive action. And finally, 4, regulate NGO funding. Massive amounts of funding pushed from wealthy, often American endowments into thousands of NGOs and newspapers and schools every year, staffed by courtiers, almost all of it focused on offensively historical goals, generating more useless outrage because no one ever agreed to them. So it'd be the easiest thing in the world to regulate this away across the political spectrum. This would reopen space for grassroots movements and reader-led media to reappear. And that would let us find out what is actually popular.
Thank you very much.